Welcome to the session, everyone. Today, we're diving into a singular approach, the reps in reserve method for muscle building. It's quite a shift from the traditional pump chasing mindset.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. It's fascinating. We've seen so many gym enthusiasts hit it hard, trying to get that swollen, pumped up look every workout.
Right. Old school bodybuilders, as we know, would chase that relentless pump, doing marathon sets, isolating muscles, feeling that rush of blood into specific areas.
hmm But here's the clincher. While the pump is super satisfying, it's not exactly the most efficient path for maximizing muscle growth, right?
Exactly. You see, when you're chasing the pump, you tend to stick with isolation exercises and high volume. Lots of reps, but without that explosive intensity.
Yeah. And that intensity, well, it's what truly drives muscle hypertrophy. I mean, using compound movements and correctly pushing your limits provide, a more effective stimulus.
Yeah, it's like um you want to create a signal inside your muscles that says, "Hey, grow." But if you're always on the verge of that pump, you're often not going hard enough to truly stimulate growth. You're uh leaving gains on the table.
Right. So, how does the reps in reserve method change that game? What exactly does RIR mean in this context?
Great question. RIR, which stands for reps in reserve, is essentially a gauge of how many extra reps you think you could perform if you pushed beyond the set amount. Let's say your plan is 3 sets of 8 reps. You want to hit that eighth rep so hard that you only feel, like you could crack out 2 more, but not more than that.
hmm So, instead of going to full exhaustion, you're intentionally stopping with a reserve like a safety buffer.
Exactly. You're not training to absolute failure every set. Instead, you're ensuring enough intensity, making those final reps really, challenging while still preserving form for future sets.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's a bit like having just the right amount of fuel in the tank to push you without leaving you stranded at the finish line.
Exactly. And it allows you to handle compound movements with heavier weights. When you're not burning out chasing that pump, you can train with the intensity needed to really build muscle.
Right, right. But I do have a bit of a challenge to one of those points. You mentioned that the pump is not giving you the muscle building stimulus you need. However, some argue that the pump has its own, like, hormonal benefits. How do you weigh that against RIR?
That's a solid point. Sure, the pump does elicit some hormonal responses, like increased blood flow, which can help with nutrient delivery, but the problem is that relying solely on the pump tends to promote isolation work over the compound, multi-joint exercises that frankly have a higher return on muscular work.
Yeah, I get that. So the idea is to integrate a level of intensity that really forces the muscles to respond without burning you out prematurely.
Yes, exactly. Think of it like when you're cooking and you need to simmer something just right. A gentle but firm hand is required, not a raging boil every time.
hmm That's a cool analogy, like simmering just right so that the flavors develop without overcooking the dish.
Precisely. And by maintaining roughly 2 reps in reserve during each working set, you're striking that balance. You're challenging the muscle enough for growth without completely maxing out every rep.
And that prevents early burnout, right? I mean, by not going to total failure, you maintain better form and can sustain the workout session. Yes.
Right. Better form also means better results over time. And here's another aspect. If you perform your final rep too easily, that's a sign you're not pushing as hard as you could. In this method, that's a cue to increase the weight.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's almost like a built in progress tracker. If you're breezing through the last rep, it means your current load is too light. You need to adapt and escalate the challenge.
Yes, exactly. And it's interesting because unlike training to failure, which can be sporadic and inconsistent, the RIR method gives you a measurable way to ensure every set is both taxing and safe.
I see what you're saying. I imagine it's also less mentally taxing I mean, not every gym goer wants to feel like they've um completely rattled themselves by ending each set on a note of complete exhaustion.
Absolutely. It can also contribute to more consistent progress. You're training smartly by regulating fatigue, thereby reducing injury risk while still driving muscle
Hmm.
hypertrophy.
And speaking of injury, isn't chasing the pump often linked with poor form since you're trying so hard to get that swollen sensation?
Exactly. When you're chasing that pump, you sometimes sacrifice form for the sheer sensation, which can uh, create bad habits or even lead to injury. The RIR method, by its design, encourages maintaining proper form.
Got it. So essentially, you're building muscle the right way while also focusing on longevity and avoiding burnout.
Yes, that's the heart of it. It's about realizing that you might actually achieve superior gains when you're training smarter rather than just going all out every set.
Exactly, exactly. Now, I'm curious, what about recovery? Does using this method change how you approach rest between sets or training sessions?
It can indeed. Since you're not completely exhausting every muscle group to the point of failure, your recovery can be better managed. That means more consistent workouts over the long run, which is key to muscle growth.
Yes, that makes sense. And I imagine it also lends itself to smarter periodization, gradually intensifying and then pulling back, which honestly is much more sustainable.
Absolutely. And there's also a feedback loop here. If you notice you're consistently hitting that extra rep with ease, it's a clear indicator to up your weights or adjust other variables. It's a very dynamic approach.
Exactly. I love that dynamic built in gauge. It reminds me of a finely tuned instrument, a bit like um, having that perfect balance between work and rest in a well conducted orchestra.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. It's like conducting a performance. You need to know when to push, when to ease up, and when to adjust the intensity to keep everything harmonious.
Right. Now, from a practical standpoint, how do you incorporate this into a typical session? Say you have a routine of compound movements. How do you estimate your RIR?
Well, you start by becoming intimately familiar with how many reps you can reliably perform with proper form for each exercise. Then, with practice, you'd gauge that final rep. So, for instance, if you're doing 3 sets of 8, you push until rep 8 feels like it might be your last solid move, leaving, just room for 2 more
I
reps
see.
if forced.
So it's really about tuning into your body, being mindful of fatigue, and adjusting the load accordingly.
Exactly. And that mindfulness, paired with the appropriate weight selection and um, consistent tracking, can really take your training to the next level without the burnout that comes from traditional pump chasing.
Absolutely. This approach really seems to offer a more sustainable, scientifically sound path to muscle building. I mean, who wouldn't want to train hard but also smartly, right?
Right on. And it's a welcome change for anyone tired of just exhausting themselves in pursuit of a fleeting pump, which, while visually appealing in the gym mirror, isn't the golden ticket to long term gains.
Exactly, exactly. Summing it all up, the reps in reserve method offers that perfect equilibrium, challenging your muscles enough for growth, maintaining excellent form, securing better recovery, and ultimately building more muscle over time.
You nailed it. It's all about balance and intensity. When you respect the method, you're, um, harnessing your body's true potential. And that, my friend, is how you build muscle that lasts.
Totally. Thanks for this deep dive. It's inspiring to see how the right approach can transform a workout from mindless pumping to strategic, effective muscle building.
Absolutely. Here's to training smart and making every rep count.